Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
44% of Americans are worried they'll never be able to retire, which is at an all-time high. That is from the latest SimplyWise Retirement Confidence Index. There are some simple steps you can take to gauge your preparedness for retirement. It's as easy as checking off the boxes on our retirement checklist that we will walk you through on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. And Philip, I am really looking forward to this show today. We're going to be walking you through a retirement checklist and basically going through all the different things that you need to think about to gauge your readiness for retirement. This is a great topic. Philip, looking forward to jumping into this with you. I hope you're doing great this week.
Yeah, it really is. You know, it is one of those things that I'm thinking, people that are retired, it doesn't hurt to go back through this checklist for them either, Jen. But definitely for folks that are like 5 years out from retirement, you want to pull this out. You want to kind of look at it and say, okay, look, this makes sense, and walk through and say, okay, do I have this ready? Do I have that ready? Have I checked to see how much I'm going to get from Social Security? What's my pension going to be? Have I got this area covered and that area covered? There's just things that you need to be prepared for as we head into retirement. And it's good to just kind of listen to the show today and get an idea of what that looks like for you and start that process of checking the boxes and making sure you've got all your areas covered for retirement.
So, Philip, let's start at the beginning here. How do you determine just how prepared a new client is for retirement?
Everybody's a little bit different there, but the process is really to sit down with folks and look at a couple things. One is, how much are they going to need in retirement? Have they done the budgeting process to really determine what income need they're going to have? If they haven't, that's really a starting point, because if we don't know what they're going to need in retirement, then we can't tell if they're ready or not. We can't tell if they have enough put back in their retirement accounts or if they've got enough saved up. There's not a lot we can do if we don't have that budgeted. Hey, this is what I need, Philip. I need $3,000 a month, or I need $5,000 a month, or hey, look, I only need $2,500. I'm pretty frugal. We need that number, and we need it to be really tied down pretty tight, Jen. We need that to be, okay, look, Philip, I've run my numbers. This is what I need to enjoy retirement, not just what I need to pay the bills and squeak by, but this is what I need to really enjoy my retirement. And so then that gives us a number to shoot for. From there, we can go back and determine by running through the income planning process whether or not they have enough built up to retire and have the retirement they always dreamed of.
Right. So there's a lot that goes into this when it comes to making sure that you are fully ready and prepared for retirement. What we have today is a retirement checklist. We're going to be spending the whole show going through this today, and it's broken down into a few key categories. And I think, Philip, these are categories you'll recognize: income, healthcare, risk management, tax-efficient strategies, and estate and legacy planning. Those are really the key pillars or the key areas to your overall core retirement design, that comprehensive process, right?
It is. These are the areas that everybody needs to address when they start looking at retirement. And it's one of those things that some people will weigh certain aspects of that heavier than others. And I understand that. But I look at it and think, it's about 50-50 here when I look at it. I look at the income as vitally. That's almost like, how can you go into retirement not knowing that you have the income you need to retire? Having that income plan in place. And then healthcare. Well, healthcare, everybody's going to deal with healthcare no matter what, right? Because if something happens, it happens, and we have to deal with it. Now, it's nice if we have some plan in place to know how we're going to deal with not your normal day-to-day health care, but long-term care. those type of things. What's our plan for that? We need to know what that's going to be depending upon what happens to us. And we pray that nothing, that we never have to execute that plan, but we still have to have that plan put back there. Risk management, that's another one I think is up there with income planning. To me, it's one of the highest ones. We need to make sure we have that under control, because risk is what tears down the majority of the portfolios. When I sit down with people, they're just beat up when it comes to having too much risk in their current portfolio. And so we want to walk through our core retirement design, because that really helps them determine what that risk needs to look like for them, and then making sure that that matches up with the portfolio that's designed for them. Tax efficient strategies. People don't realize how much taxes can eat up their retirement savings. And so we want to make sure that when we do the income planning, that we're also looking at tax efficient strategies. I mean, it's really that simple to be able to do that. And then lastly, estate planning, legacy planning. This isn't everybody's deal. They're not concerned sometimes about legacy planning, and that's okay. Everybody's family is different, but everybody needs to look at estate planning, because that determines what happens to you not only while you're still alive, but when you pass away. And people a lot of times equate that, Jen, with just dealing with when they pass away. But it has to do when they're still living, right? If you have a trust, making sure it's set up properly to take care of you. If you have a stroke or some other healthcare issue that you can't take care of yourself, or making sure you have the right documents in place. So a lot of that stuff, we want to make sure that they're set up properly for those things. Listen, we talk a lot about income planning here at Statler Financial because it's important. It's vitally important, because without that written retirement income plan, you have nothing to rely on to know how much your income is going to be month in and month out. That's why we developed our core retirement design to help you design the retirement you always dreamed of, starting with your risk. How much risk do you have in your portfolio, and does it really and truly match up with your risk tolerance? And then ultimately ending up with an optimized risk-matched portfolio. Hey, listen, folks, if you saved at least $250,000 for retirement, please give us a call and let's walk through our core retirement design process. That number is 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services, and I am Jen Rezac alongside, going through this retirement checklist today. When it comes to your income, the first few boxes you need to check involve your budget. You need to have a written budget. You need an estimate of the income you'll need each year when you retire. Philip, talk about how you know if you've saved enough to cover all of your anticipated expenses in retirement.
Well, again, that's just like you said, it boils down to writing down what those numbers are that you're going to spend. Because if you don't know what they are, and I mean detailed, because if not, you'll forget something. You'll miss something. You got to go back through that checkbook, go through the credit card statements. What am I spending? And then what am I spending to enjoy retirement with the fun stuff, right? Because we don't want to retire and sit home and twiddle our thumbs. We want to enjoy retirement. And so that's really what we look at is helping folks build that budget, so we know what we got to solve for.
We also need to take an inventory of our income sources and how they'll be taxed. I think a lot of us, Philip, can fill in that first blank. We know about our pension, our Social Security. We know what the income is. But how do we know if and how those things will be taxed? Because that impacts our bottom line for what we can actually spend.
It does, because taxes are an expense that you're going to have to pay. That's where our incoming process really, planning for that income comes into play, because we understand the tax effects of each account that we have. And so we blend those things together to come up with the most tax effective and tax efficient plan when it comes to distributing that income out to you. And that's really the key, is just solving for that gap and then just being as efficient as possible with all those different accounts that we've got to deal with.
Another piece that I want to talk about real quickly that we can't overlook when we're creating an inventory is of our income and assets is an inventory of our debts. We have to look at that side of it as well. How important is it to make sure we have a handle on those liabilities when we're figuring out what we can afford to spend in retirement?
Jim, that may be one of the things that people forget about. They don't think about what the debt is that they've built up. Those folks, because obviously I deal with a lot of people, but those folks that retire without debt are much happier, less stressful, and a lot easier to plan for their income. And so I would encourage folks out there as they head into retirement to focus on that, getting rid of all of the, I'm going to say, non-mortgage debt. I mean, if you can get rid of the mortgage, that'd be great too. But if you can get rid of everything but the mortgage, that is a huge deal heading into retirement.
If you're worried about being able to afford retirement, as we talk about all these different factors, you're not alone. The Simply Wise Retirement Confidence Index indicates 44% of Americans are worried they will never be able to retire. And Charles Schwab's Modern Wealth Survey says only 33% of Americans have a written financial plan. So, Philip, that means nearly 70% of us do not.
So let me just kind of connect some of those dots for you. A lot of you are worried that you haven't saved enough or that you won't be able to retire. And most of you don't have any kind of written financial retirement income plan. And a written retirement income plan can really and truly help you feel more financially stable. You don't want to have to be one of those folks that are worrying about if your money's going to last or if you can even afford to retire at all. We have a process for helping you create the income strategy, and we start with what we call our core retirement design. If you're listening to me right now and you don't have a written retirement income strategy, and based on the statistics that we've been talking about today, you probably don't. I invite you to give us a call and let us help you create the budget. Figure out how much risk you have in your current portfolio. Help you put together an income plan that's going to get you into and through retirement. And then make sure that the portfolio is designed with all of that in mind so that it's optimized for your risk tolerance. It's complimentary to do this analysis, and there's no obligation. But you do need to have saved at least $250,000 for retirement. Call us at 863-285-3815 and ask for your core retirement design visit. That's it's just core retirement design. And after that, we've analyzed everything. Then we'll sit down and start mapping out your strategy to get you where you want to go. Folks, this isn't about those big wins and clobbering it in the stock market. We aren't doing this to make you rich. We want to make sure that you don't end up outliving your money. That's way more important than the big gains people talk about in the stock market all the time. 863-285-3815. Give us a call now and schedule your core retirement design visit. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
So take advantage of this special opportunity from Philip to help make sure you won't run out of money, and you might even boost your returns over time. We encourage you to get started today, 863-285-3815. Now, if some of your income in retirement will be coming from your retirement savings, you could get hit with the highest penalty in the tax code if you aren't careful. We have more income boxes to check on our retirement checklist coming up next.
In times of volatility, the only wrong move is not making one. Call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Services today and find out where you currently stand with your portfolio. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your R&B, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. StatlerFinancial.com is the website if you'd like to learn a little bit more. Nearly 70% of Americans are missing a written financial plan, and people without a plan tend to feel less confident about their future. So how do you get started on that path to more confidence through planning? That's what we're doing today. We're going through our retirement checklist to help you get a handle on what you might be missing. If you are not able to check off the boxes with us, we invite you to call Philip for some help in closing the gaps in your plan, and that number is 863-285-3815. Now, Philip, one of the income boxes on our checklist is about Social Security. I think that's a really good place to start in this part of the show. How do I determine when I should start taking my Social Security benefits?
And here, when we talk about Social Security, Jen, it is a good case for there's not one process, there's not one answer that can go to everybody, right? It's very individualized to determine what makes the most sense for you. Because we look at things like life expectancy, right? How healthy are you? What's your life expectancy? Yeah, and so we have to go back and look at generation, right? How long did your mom and daddy live? That type of thing. How long did your grandparents live? We want to get an idea of what that looks like for you. And then how much other assets do you have? I mean, there's so many things that take into consideration of when you should start drawing your Social Security. So many people want to just, I'll take it at 62. That doesn't always make the most sense. A matter of fact, a lot of times it makes no sense. And so we want to make sure that we are not just pulling the cord for Social Security because of our age, right? Because we're 62, we're 65, we're 67. Let's run the numbers. What makes the most sense for you? We start out a lot of times by having clients give us their Social Security statements. What is your Social Security going to be at 62, at 67, at 70? And we use those numbers to help determine the best timing for taking their Social Security. And that's all part of the income planning process. We'll look at that and determine what's the optimal time and what's the optimal process for them to start taking that Social Security benefit.
Mm-hmm. And, with Social Security, Philip, it's really tempting to make a quick decision just based on our age, because you hear about, the age of eligibility or whatever, but talk about why this does need some careful thought.
Here's the deal. You get a lot less at 62 than what you're going to get at 67. And you're going to get less at 67 than what you're going to get at 70. And so people think, well, yeah, but I'm not going to live long enough to make that difference up. Don't be too quick to answer that question, and assume that it takes too long. Because the penalty you take for taking that benefit at 62 instead of 67 is significant. I mean, it's a 30 to 35%, maybe even a 40% haircut that you're taking on that benefit by taking it so early. And the question is, how long is it going to take you to make that up? Well, it depends, right? We have to run those numbers and see how long do you have to live for it to make more sense for you to wait until 67. And maybe you don't even wait till 67, Jen, because for every year you wait past 62, you get a bump up. And so I have a lot of folks that say, well, I don't want to wait till 67. So I think I'll do it when I start taking Medicare. which for a lot of folks, that does make sense. And so, but we want to run those numbers. We want to see what that looks like for everybody, because it doesn't make sense for everybody to wait. Some people should take their Social Security at 62 because of their health considerations, but you don't know that unless you walk through the process to determine what that number really truly needs to be looked at. That's why when we're putting together that retirement income plan, that written retirement income plan, Social Security is a big part of it. Knowing what that number is and what the benefit's going to be at every age level plays a big role in that process. Look, if you don't have a written retirement income plan, please give us a call, 863-285-3815, and let's sit down and walk you through our core retirement design and help you design the retirement you always dreamed of.
That number again, 863-285-3815. Aside from income from Social Security, we need to understand that how we're taking income from our different accounts can potentially impact our taxes. Philip, that's another box we need to be able to check on our retirement checklist here today. What do we need to think about when it comes to taking money out of our different accounts?
So we need to be cognizant of the different accounts we have, right? So a lot of people, the majority of their money is where? It's in an IRA or it's in a 401k. And usually when I sit down with folks, that the majority of it is in tax deferred accounts, which means we have not paid the tax on that money yet. Now, if we have a Roth account, that's great. Man, we love it when people come in with some Roth accounts because that gives us a lot more flexibility. But that's where the income plan really and truly helps us determine what it's going to look like and how can we maximize the income brackets to minimize our income taxes. Because ultimately, those retirement accounts, we're going to get told how much we have to take out of there. We're not going to have a choice. And so a lot of times, Jen, we'll start looking at options and avenues to help reduce it long term, which may mean we have to take a little bit more out short term. But it's all based on income planning. Even tax planning becomes involved when we're looking at income planning. Being as efficient, as effective as we can with those tax brackets is a big help, and all the way across the board. And the more options you have, whether it's a regular IRA, a Roth IRA, and non-qualified money, the more options you have, the easier that planning becomes to get away from some taxes.
Mm-hmm. How do you help people avoid missteps here when it comes to taking money from their retirement accounts? Because this is where you can run into some serious problems with penalties and that type of thing. How do we avoid making any missteps there?
You know, Jen, if we can get to them first, or they get to us first before they do anything, that's usually not an issue, right? We can walk through the process and we can stop it before they do something that's going to cause them a lot of tax and penalties. Where that really comes into play is that people do stuff before they come see us. Mm-hmm. And then when that happens, most of the time it's too late. We can't fix it. And so that's why I tell people all the time, look, before you do anything, before you take money out of your 401k, before you take that money out of your FRS, before you do anything, sit down with us and let's make sure that you're making the right choice and there's not a better way to do it. You know, I was sitting down the other day with some folks that he's retired early and they want to pay off their mortgage. Mm-hmm. I understand that, but he's not 59 and a half. So not only is he going to have to pay tax, he's going to have to pay some penalty on that. And so if he takes the whole thing out right now and pays off the mortgage, it's going to jack him up in this high tax bracket. Wow. Where if maybe we do it over 2 years, take some, pay half of it this year, pay half of it next year, maybe we can cut that tax bill by a bracket or two. Those are the things I'm talking about, is planning ahead. Those are the important things that we need to look at.
How do we get a better handle on this stuff, Philip? The taxes, the fees, the penalties, and their potential impact on our retirement?
You know, I think it's just sitting down with somebody before you do something. And the person you sit down with needs to have a very good understanding of taxes. They need to understand the whole process of income planning. Ideally, you need to deal with somebody that has a fiduciary responsibility to do what's in your best interest. Those are the things. Who does special training? We do a lot of Ed Slott stuff, every year, twice a year, actually. We get with Ed Slott, who is considered by a lot of media outlets to be the expert when it comes to IRAs and planning. And so we sit with him twice a year for 2 or 3 days each time to kind of get educated on that stuff. Are you dealing with somebody that stays up to date on all these type of things? That's what's critically important.
It is so important that you know what's going on with the rules when it comes to taking money out of your accounts. Forbes says required minimum distributions can trigger the highest penalty in the tax code if you don't follow the rules. That is when you have to start taking money out of those accounts. That's called your required minimum distribution. And if you get it wrong, those are steep penalties. And you do not want steep penalties and potentially higher taxes leaving you with a fraction of the money you were counting on for your retirement.
If you make a mistake here, Jen, with your required minimum distribution from your IRA or other retirement accounts, the penalty for not taking that full amount of your required minimum distribution is 50% of the amount that you should have taken. In addition to the income tax you still have to pay on that distribution. You also need to understand the timing of your required minimum distribution, because they could do things like push you into a higher income tax bracket. They can trigger higher taxes on your Social Security benefit, and they can cause a higher Medicare premium surtax, which a lot of people don't realize until it's way too late. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up steep penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes. For listeners of today's show, if you've saved at least $250,000 for your retirement, call us 863-285-3815, and we can help you create a retirement income plan that includes a strategy for taking distributions from your accounts to help ensure your retirement savings last as long as you need it to last. There's no cost, there's no obligation, but this is only for the listeners of today's show. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Nearly 70% of retirees will need some type of long-term care. You definitely need to be able to check those boxes on healthcare and long-term care planning on your retirement checklist. We'll get into that in just a moment. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
You can't see it, but you sure can feel it. The economy is struggling right now. Do you know how it might affect your retirement? Some retirement plans take into account economic downturns, stock market dips, interest rate fluctuations. Does yours? Take charge of your retirement by calling Philip Statler at 863-285-3815. Philip and his team at Statler Financial have been helping families prepare for retirement for over 20 years. They will help address the current economic situation and help you create a retirement plan designed to give you the confidence to move forward. Opportunities can exist regardless of economic conditions. Call the team, Philip Statler with Statler Financial at 863-285-3815 and find out ways you can prepare now for your retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Call them now. Schedule a visit. Let's get started. Firm offers insurance services. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler and co-host Jen Rezac.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here alongside Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. And today we are walking through our retirement checklist, helping us gauge our preparedness by seeing how many boxes we can check as it relates to preparing for retirement. And I have to tell you, Philip, why I love this topic so much. As a mom, a working mom of 4, I can't even tell you how much I love lists. I live off of lists and checklists, and I'll confess something to you here as well, Philip. Do I get to the end of the day and realize I did a couple things that weren't on my list, and I go ahead and I add them to the bottom of the list just so I can check them off?
And that way you feel better, right?
Yes, I do that. Do you do things like that also? Or maybe does your wife? I don't know. I love checking boxes off of my checklists.
I've got to confess, I don't do that. I'm just thankful if I can check the boxes that I've got on my list.
You're not adding extra thing. It's kind of, I don't know, it's extra credit. I love it. And when I give myself a to-do list, I physically draw the little box in that I can go back and check off later. So this topic today is right up my alley. So any other list makers out there and box checkers out there, I think you're probably enjoying this topic today as we go through our retirement checklist. Now, Philip, we're going to kind of change up the topics of our boxes here in this part of the show. Nearly 70% of retirees will need some type of long-term care, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And while the costs do vary quite a bit by location, depending on where you are in the country, the median cost of a private room in a nursing home is over $100,000. So a plan, Philip, to cover potential long-term care needs obviously has to go on our retirement checklist. What are some of the options for addressing those potential long-term care costs?
Well, there is true that long-term care costs are something that really are in most retirees' minds. They think about it, they're concerned about it, and that number 70% really is that's a big number. And so we want to be prepared for what that means. And so there are ways. There's the old-fashioned, right, long-term care insurance. Now, you just don't see very many people purchasing it. Mostly because it's expensive.
Right.
It just is what it is, right? And most people believe that they'll never need it bad enough to have the insurance. Gotcha. So that's one. 2, there are life insurance policies out there that have what they call living benefits, which are they have long-term care riders on there, or they have accelerated death benefits provided for them, or the terminal illness benefits built into them. So some folks have nice size life insurance policies that can double as a long-term care policy. Now, you need to be specific if that's the case. You need to understand and double check, does your policy have long-term care benefits? And what do you have to do to qualify? Because every company is different. Some of them have really stringent rules on what it requires to be, quote, in a long-term care facility, and it only applies to a nursing home, not assisted living. So you need to understand what those things look like. And then the other places, you just self-insure, right? You have a big enough pot of money over here that you can afford to pay if you have to go into a long-term care facility. And lastly is you rely on the state, the government, the Medicaid system to provide for long-term care. And that, is for some people is not as hard as it sounds. It's just having the right team in place to help you through that process. Those are kind of your options when it comes to long-term care, Jen.
So a lot of things that you want to think about, and Philip, as you were talking through some of those different options, for people who check off that long-term care box because their plan is having their kids provide care, so they say, got it done, that's my plan for long-term care, I'm checking that box. What do you say to someone who's checking their box with that plan in mind?
I have a couple things to say. Don't rely on it, number one. Because here's the deal. People are still living longer, right?
Yes.
And so I have clients now who their parents, they're 70 years old. Their parents are 90 years old.
Mm.
Their health isn't good. So now, consequently, the parent that's 90, the child can't take care of them because they have their own health issues.
Sure.
And so as we live longer, that becomes a problem. And so I just tell people, don't rely on that. Because, obviously if your kids can, they're going to step in and help. But every family's dynamics are different, and the family dynamics can change over time. So you can make that plan today, and there can be a squabble, and all of a sudden that plan's out the window. And people think, well, that won't happen to me. Look, I've been doing this a long time. It can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw cold water on your plans, but look, let's be, a realist when it comes to planning for these type of things. Let's don't be hopeful, because those things that we hope for don't always come to fruition. Yep. Let's look at things in terms of a real possibility. And I tell you, don't count on your kids to be able to do that. Let's make sure we've got other plans in place, because that doesn't always work out.
Right. That's such a great point. I mean, so many things can change over time, but what we don't want to do is put our head in the sand, avoid the issue, and just not address it. When would you say is the best time to start thinking about some sort of coverage plan for long-term care?
Look, if you think you want to buy the insurance, then if you think, hey, look, I want to check out the long-term care insurance, I think that, I have people that they don't have any children. So the folks that don't have children, they're the ones most likely to buy long-term care insurance because it's on them, right? And so I say, look, at 50, if you're thinking about buying long-term care insurance, 50 years old is where you might want to start looking at it, because, the cost is going to be lower, right? You're going to pay longer, but at least the cost is going to be less. But definitely when you get ready to retire, it needs to be part of that retirement planning process of what's my answer for long-term care. And if, it kind of plays into the whole income thing, we need to understand what that looks like. And if you don't have an income plan, you don't have any kind of plan for your retirement, other than what I call a junk drawer, a bunch of stuff all over the place, then let's sit down and go through our core retirement design. Give us a call today at 863-285-3815.
That number again, 863-285-3815. Now, Philip, aside from long-term care coverage, we also need to know what's going on with our Medicare coverage for retirement. So let's talk a little bit about some of those healthcare questions. How do you handle Medicare questions with your clients?
Well, we don't do Medicare here. We'll field questions and help people through that process. But we have a provider that helps. We have actually a friend of mine that helps do Medicare supplements and that type of stuff. And so we kind of forward those folks over there after we've answered their questions and kind of give them a starting point of where to go from.
And here's the other thing. Medicare is certainly something that we will have in retirement, but there's other healthcare costs as well. Fidelity estimates the average 65-year-old couple retiring today might need about $300,000 after taxes to cover their healthcare expenses. So a couple of things on our retirement checklist include maxing out your health savings account contributions if you can, if that's applicable to you, and having a plan for major medical insurance coverage prior to your Medicare. Any other thoughts that you have there on handling those healthcare costs in retirement?
No, I think those are right up the right alley to be looking at. I mean, if you have the opportunity to use a health savings account, please, do it, because that is an optimal way to save for down the road when you are retired. Then you can start using those funds to help pay for healthcare costs. And you get a tax deduction while you're working, which could be very useful too. So, if at all possible, use the health savings account. Those are a big deal, very helpful. And then other than that, you need to make sure that you've got the right Medicare plan in place for you? Should you have a Medicare Advantage plan? Does that make sense for you? Or should you have good old-fashioned Medicare supplements? Those are the things you need to look at, and you need to weigh them very carefully because it can impact your retirement in a very meaningful way if you pick the wrong one.
Right. And here's the thing that just astounds me, Philip. Every year, more than 500,000 Americans file for bankruptcy due to medical bills. You think about a healthcare emergency, catastrophic illness, or an accident, it can knock you off your feet physically and financially.
Imagine how fast your life savings could shrink if you don't have a strategy in place to help protect your money and your family from financial threats like skyrocketing healthcare costs. And it's not going to get cheaper in the future either. Nobody is saying the cost for medicine or surgery is going to go down in 20 years. I haven't seen anybody say that. It's just going to keep going up, up, up. Medicare will be there for you. But the reality is it doesn't cover everything. Out-of-pocket healthcare costs can still add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars over your retirement. That's why I want to help you create a strategy to help protect your retirement income from risks like skyrocketing healthcare costs. Learn about the options for healthcare coverage and retirement. Learn about the options for long-term care coverage for yourself and your spouse. Find ways to plan for healthcare costs so you don't have to choose between taking that vacation or spoiling your grandkids and paying your doctor bills. Those are some tough decisions you don't want to have to make. A major illness, a car accident, these things can sink your ship in retirement. It's a reality that you just have to face. Call me today to talk about some of the ways we can help you create a financial strategy to protect your lifestyle, your livelihood, and your family from healthcare costs. That number is 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
No one's promised tomorrow. That's why it is important for you to get a plan in place for your healthcare needs today. That number again, 863-285-3815. Nearly 70% of Americans are missing a written financial plan. If you're missing a written financial plan, our retirement checklist can help you close some of the gaps. The Statler Financial Radio Show continues in just a moment.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Philip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here alongside Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services today, talking about our retirement checklist. The Retirement Confidence Index from SimplyWise says 44% of Americans are worried they will never be able to retire. That's at an all-time high. Charles Schwab's Modern Wealth Survey says only 33% of Americans have a written financial plan. So, Philip, we do the math there. That means nearly 70% of us don't have a plan.
Yeah, you're right. That's a lot of folks that don't have any kind of plan in place. And so if you're worried about being able to retire, if you're not sure if you can afford to retire, that means you probably don't have a plan in place. And the statistics tell us more than likely you probably don't have what we call a retirement income plan for your retirement. The retirement checklist we're walking through today can help you kind of gauge your preparedness for retirement. So you can see kind of where your gaps are and where you might need some help or where you need to focus going forward. It's important to really kind of pay attention as we've gone through these things today.
Now, when it comes to the risk you're taking with your money, there are some boxes you need to be able to check on our retirement checklist. Philip, things like an assessment of your risk tolerance and any adjustments to your level of risk. Philip, when it comes to our risk tolerance, how do you assess that for someone?
You know, Jen, there's a lot of what we call fine tech out there right now, which is financial technology. And these guys have done a tremendous job of really and truly being able to take risk and create it into a numeric number. And so we use this new technology because it really helps people. Because what we saw was back in 2008, the last what I call major bear market we had, you know, a lot of folks thought they were moderate investors. Well, moderate investors, their portfolios were down over 30%, right? And so they really and truly found out they were more conservative or moderately conservative because they could really withstand about a 10 or 15% decline before they started really getting, ill and looking at their portfolio. So this process allows us to really focus in on what that number looks like for our clients. And so that's why we developed our core retirement design, because it helps us really and truly calculate everyone's personal risk preference. And that really helps us to then analyze their portfolio and then help them create the portfolio that's going to better match their risk tolerance.
And this is one of those areas where we don't want all risk. We don't want all safety. Philip, there's got to be a balance there. How do you help somebody find the right balance between growth and safety when it comes to your life savings, your retirement savings?
We look at a couple things, right? We kind of look at the rule of 100. Not that it's a hard and fast rule, but it is a gauge that gives us an idea. And that rule of 100 says you take 100 minus your age. So, for example, if you're 65 years old, then we want to take 100 minus 65, and that leaves us 35. So that basically says, hey, I want no more than about 35% of my portfolio in the market at risk where it can lose money. So that's a starting point. It's not an ending point at all, but it's definitely a starting point to start the discussion. And then from there, we walk through our core retirement design that allows us to assess somebody's personal risk preference. What does that look like for them? And then from there, it allows us then to really put together that portfolio. But you're right. Here's the deal. I sit down with folks that have way too much risk in their portfolio. Somebody that's 65 years old that has every dime that they have is invested in the stock market. Too much risk. And then I also sit down with folks that are the opposite, right? They're 65 years old. They don't have a dime in the stock market. And that's not good either, because that means they're not making anything. And actually, if we look back with inflation, they actually lost money if they left money in the bank as far as purchasing power. So it's that balance between those things. And that's why we developed really and truly our core retirement design, because it walks through that whole process of number one, calculating what that risk preference is for everybody. It helps them organize their goals and objectives, and we sit down and review what the cost is and what the risk is in their current portfolio. So often people can't see what the costs are inside their portfolio. And then once we have all that information, then we can help them set up and establish that optimized risk match portfolio. That's all in our core retirement design. And it's easy. They just have to give us a call, 863-285-3815, and we can walk them through our core retirement design.
Talk a little bit about the impact that taxes could potentially have on your retirement overall.
You have that IRA, but it's not all yours, because every time you take dollars out, Uncle Sam's going to have his hand out and he's going to get part of it. And so how much is it? That just depends on what tax bracket you're in. But here's the things to remember. One, taking money out of your retirement account is you're going to have to pay taxes on it. Two, if you're drawing your Social Security, then it could really easily make more of your Social Security taxable than what you intended. Now, a lot of folks think, well, my Social Security is not taxable. It can be. And for most people out there that have any other income at all, they end up paying a little bit of tax on their Social Security. Some people, they end up paying a lot of tax on their Social Security. It's not a one size fits all. It's something that has to be addressed by every individual person.
So let's bring all this together. How do you help somebody create a strategy that addresses the key areas of our retirement checklist that we've gone through today? Income, healthcare, risk management, tax-efficient strategies, and that final piece of estate and legacy planning.
It really comes down to, that income analysis, right? A lot of you are worried that you haven't saved enough or that you won't even be able to retire. And most of you don't have a written retirement income plan. And a written retirement income plan can help you feel more financially stable so that you don't have to be one of those people worried if your money will last or if you can afford to retire. We have a process for helping you create an income strategy. And we start with what we call our core retirement design to help you design the retirement you always dreamed of. Folks, listen, if you're listening to me right now and you don't have a written retirement income strategy, and based on statistics, you probably don't, I invite you to call me so we can help you create the budget to figure out how much you're going to need in retirement, uncover the risk that could be out there that threaten your retirement, including inflation, stock market volatility, tax increases, healthcare costs. Learn about options for generating income in retirement, and learn about how to keep your current standard of living in retirement even as costs keep rising. Folks, listen, it's complimentary to do this analysis. There's no obligation, but you do need to have saved at least $250,000 for retirement. Give me a call at 863-285-3815 and ask for your core retirement design. After we've analyzed where you are right now, and then we can help you start mapping out your strategy to get you where you want to go. This isn't about the big wins. We aren't going to do this to make you rich. We want to help make sure that you don't end up outliving your money. Give me a call at 863-285-3815.
You want to take advantage of this special opportunity from Philip to make sure you won't run out of money. You might even be able to boost your returns over time. So get started today at 863-285-3815. You've been listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. That's all the time we have for this week, but be sure to tune in again next week for more insights from Philip. I'm Jen Rezac. We hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time.
In times of volatility, the only wrong move is not making one. Call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Services today and find out where you currently stand with your portfolio. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is